Since the signing of the ceasefire that effectively ended the Korean War in 1953, 7 members of the United States Armed Forces have crossed the line and defected to North Korea. In doing so, they gave up everything and everyone they ever knew to enter a land totally cut off from the outside world, where everything their former country stands for is hated. To cross the line, and I use this term both in its literal sense and its metaphorical sense for a US soldier, is an extreme step, one that most of us will never even have an opportunity to realistically contemplate. So why would someone do it? And what happened to them after? Let's start with who these men were. Larry Allen Absher, defected in 1962. James Joseph Dresnock, defected in 1962. Jerry Wayne Parrish, defected in 1963. Charles Robert Jenkins, defected in 1965. Roy Chung, defected in 1979. Joseph T. White, defected in 1982. Travis King, defected in 2023. One major question to ask ourselves is, why? Why would these men betray their oaths and risk their lives to defect? Most of the defectors were motivated by a desire to leave their current life behind. They were facing serious issues at home and didn't want to return to that. 3 of them were already looking at a dishonorable discharge before they crossed. Larry Absher was found with drugs on him several times, and according to Dresnock, constantly had venereal disease due to fraternizing with local women. He was facing a dishonorable discharge due to his dishonorable discharge and the drugs. James Dresnock was already in a pretty bad mental state due to the failure of his first marriage. He routinely struggled with Army discipline and was about to be court-martialed for forging a pass to go on leave and for being AWOL. Travis King had assaulted several South Koreans, spent 47 days in a South Korean jail, and allegedly solicited and possessed child porn. He was being transferred back to the US for court-martial and discharge when he crossed the line. His mother alleges that King was ordered to sign a document promising to not talk about his reasons for defecting or his time in North Korea. A dishonorable discharge is akin to a felony conviction. It bars you from any veteran benefits, many civil rights, and can be a severe impediment in civilian life. But that wasn't the only reason that a defector might try to escape. Jerry Parrish had a clean record and was scheduled to be honorably discharged 4 months before he crossed. But going home was a scary prospect. When interviewed about the defections of the 60s, Dresnock alleged that Parrish's stepfather had believed that Parrish was having a sexual affair with his stepsister and threatened to kill Parrish if he ever came home. Charles Jenkins, despite volunteering for the Army and being an NCO, had no desire to serve duty in Vietnam. When rumors started circulating that his unit was going, he drank 10 beers for courage and then abandoned his patrol in the middle of the night. Jenkins had assumed that he would be transferred to the Soviet Union, then returned to the US via a prisoner exchange and given a discharge. However, for a couple of the defectors, it was not an attempt to escape circumstances, but an attraction to living in North Korea that triggered their actions. This might have been another reason Parrish defected. According to Dresnock, Parrish heard propaganda broadcasts that Dresnock and Absher had made from the DPRK and thought he could have a good life in the North too. Joseph White was raised as a staunchly patriotic American, politically aligned with the extreme right. But while stationed in South Korea, he was captivated by the so-called Korean Vill culture, idolizing it, or rather his personal interpretation of it, like a modern-day weeaboo. He wrote several letters to his family talking about his desire to join the Vill culture and hinting at defecting. Roy Chung had shown no signs of discontent or of wanting to defect. He simply disappeared one night while stationed in Germany, and his presence in North Korea was announced 2 months later. In a prepared statement, Chung stated that he could no longer live under the national insult of the aggressor army. It should be noted that there have been serious suspicions by the Korean American community and veterans groups that Chung did not defect but was kidnapped and taken to North Korea. A number of other nationals from countries in Europe and the Middle East, as well as Japan and South Korea, were taken by DPRK agents around the same time. Furthermore, in response to a Freedom of Information Act, the US government revealed that North Korean commandos were given orders to capture and abduct US servicemen as early as the 1960s. However, the US government stated that they had no reason to doubt his defection and refused to make any major inquiries. He is considered a defector by the US Army, hence his inclusion on this list. Okay, so these men had different reasons. Even so, defecting to North Korea is no easy task. If you cross at the DMZ, you're liable to be shot by your own side, by the other side, or by both at the same time. That's if you don't step on a landmine and can cross the barbed wire fences. 6 of the men crossed the DMZ. White actually took a duffel bag full of stolen classified documents, including one that detailed the placement of mines in the DMZ in order to turn them over to the North Korean regime. He also took advanced night vision goggles, specs on radars used by the US, and his rifle. Fortunately, he had to abandon everything but his weapon as he struggled to cross the DMZ fences. King simply ran across the border at the Joint Security Area, the only place where South Korean troops and their United Nations Command allies stand face to face with their North Korean counterparts. Chung was the only soldier not to cross the DMZ. He allegedly traveled across the Soviet Union and entered through China, the only defector to do so. As an active duty soldier in the US Army, crossing the Soviet Union would have been no easy task in 1979, at least if he was traveling on his own initiative. Okay, so you've made the decision to cross, and now you have done it and lived. Now what? Did the defectors find what they were looking for? Well, it's hard to know. We know that upon crossing, they would generally be grabbed by DPRK troops, hustled away, and interrogated. After that, they were assigned living quarters by the North Korean government, as well as political minders and tutors, and a ration allowance of food, clothing, etc. They would be used as propaganda puppets, appearing on TV and in photo shoots, always looking happy. But past that, there are few reports on what actually happened to the defectors after they crossed over, and what reports we do have often conflict with each other. For instance, Drastic claims that he, Absher, Parrish, and Jenkins were treated well. Jenkins disputes this, detailing daily beatings and torture, even forced surgery without anesthesia. Here's what we do know. The 4 defectors from the 60s all tried to claim asylum in the USSR after defecting to North Korea. They were denied sanctuary and returned to North Korean custody. Absher died at 40 from heart disease and Parrish at 52 or 54. Absher reportedly impregnated a Korean woman, a government minder who was assigned to cook, clean, and sleep with him. No information exists as to what happened to his child or the woman. Parrish had left a note to his family that he would return home someday, but he never did. He married an abductee from Lebanon and had 3 sons. His wife and sons were still living in North Korea as of 2006. Drastic claimed to be happy with his choice to defect. He was interviewed in 2006 and claimed that nothing could entice him to return to the US. He passed away in 2016 at the age of 75. All 3 of his sons remain in North Korea, one of them being an officer in the Korean People's Army. Charles Jenkins was allowed to leave North Korea with his Japanese wife, an abductee, during a temporary warming of relations between the DPRK and Japan. Contrary to reports by Drastic, Jenkins described severe abuse and harsh conditions in the north. After some time in a hospital, Jenkins was court-martialed by the US Army. He spent 30 days in the brig and forfeited all his back pay. Jenkins tried to tell people that he, a 7th grade dropout, had been specially selected by US Army intelligence to be a double agent in North Korea. But nobody really bought it, though he might have answered some questions for them while he served his time in prison. He never had to serve in Vietnam, but whether spending 37 years in North Korea was a better trade-off, well, who knows. Jenkins passed away in 2017 in Japan. Roy Chung, if he was really trying to escape national insult and aggressor armies, might have found out that victorious fatherland liberation armies can be just as bad. There are reports that he was beaten to death by North Korean military police in the small cell he was kept in 1993. It should be noted, though, that the prison he was allegedly held in was a high-security prison for abductees or politically sensitive prisoners. One might question why a willful defector would be held there. Other reports say that he died of natural causes in 2004 at the age of 46. White wrote letters home after his defection and stated that he was happy with his choice in all of them. He was also interviewed, though only by the state-controlled North Korean media, and spoke against the US and in praise of North Korea and its leader, Kim Il-sung. However, Jenkins alleged that North Korean officials told him, unofficially, that White had come to regret his choice. Whatever the case may be, White reportedly drowned in a North Korean river in 1985 at the tender age of 23. Jenkins believed that White's drowning had not been purely accidental. Travis King was only in North Korea for a couple of months. No information has come out as to what he experienced while he was there. However, the fact that he was immediately booked into the Department of Defense's only Level 1 trauma center may speak to what he went through. Or maybe not. We just don't know. North Korea is perhaps the most anti-American country in the world, issuing constant threats of nuclear annihilation to the US and its regional allies. The common perception of North Korea in the West is one of a strange, destitute, and backward country held in thrall by the Kim dynasty, a view supported by eyewitness accounts. And yet, 7 men have gambled everything, sometimes running from, sometimes running to, but always in search of a new life. Most of the time it didn't work out though, so maybe the moral of the story is just think twice before defecting to the DPRK.